This is day one at PMI London, and I'm joined by Warrick Lambert from Redu. We're going to talk about Warrick's session and PMI in general today. So Warrick, tell me a bit about PMI today. Have you learned anything new so far?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting session so far. So I've attended a couple of the talks so far, particularly Sri Sharma's keynote on machine learning, the future of AI and kind of emerging technologies was, it was just really interesting. I think it's, I'd say interesting and potentially devastatingly scary if a lot of his predictions come true, because I'm not sure how we're going to adapt to that. But I think there's, just a whole bunch of opportunities. So it's been a really interesting conference so far.
That's good to hear. So your session is actually tomorrow, so we just would like to get some sneaky preview of your session. It's got quite a strong title about monetizing your audiences on Facebook. So can you just give us a few takeaways? What's the most important thing in your session? What do you want audience to know?
Sure. So I think there's a couple of key points I think that we're really aware of in our own work on the Ashley Money Saver page. So the first thing is that you need to kind of look at the audience that you want and then target that audience really aggressively and specifically. So I think there's an idea and a kind of a preoccupation by some of the pages that you just kind of go after the biggest number of likes you possibly can, whereas really what we found is that you need to understand the audience that you want and then go after that audience particularly. It's really about driving engagement as much as possible. Likes are amazing and you definitely need likes to make things work, but without engagement you've got nothing, and I think that's the main point we really want to take that, because when you have that engagement, it's then really easy to turn that interest in what you're saying into sales and then kind of build up a business around that. If all you've got is a big number of likes but no one's actually comments on what you're posting or liking the links that you're putting out there, it's really hard to kind of build any kind of momentum behind the page.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what do you think brands tend to get wrong when it comes to Facebook?
So I think the challenge, so not the challenge with Facebook, the opportunity with Facebook is that you can be really specific about what you're doing. So I think there's a danger that a lot of brands just try and extend what they're doing on their own website onto Facebook, which I think is really short-sighted and ultimately kind of self-defeating. So if you think that if you're an advertiser, you can put out a sales message about getting 20% off shoes this week on your website, and that's fine, but really that's only going to apply to a fairly small audience who are actually looking to buy shoes at that time. Whereas if you actually go and say, okay, look, you can get this specific pair of shoes that we know is really interesting to this specific audience segment, you can put the right product in front of the right audience at the time that you've got that promotion and actually combine everything into something that's much more emotive, because we find, particularly on our own page, that putting out sales messaging that's fairly broad is quite tough to make work. But if we can say to a specific audience member, we know that we've got a core demographic of women between the ages of 18 and 40. We know what they're interested in. We know their kind of likes and behaviours, so we can tailor the products we're putting in front of them exactly to that audience, and so we're able to be much more effective because of that. And I think that's what brands get wrong. It's much too general. They really need to kind of try and segment their own Facebook data, look at how they can target that audience, and then look at their own stock and try and match the two together.
Brilliant. And what do you think of the perception that sometimes people might have that social is not for hard sales? What do you make of that?
I think that's true to a point. So if you think about the way you kind of put together your social strategy, with sales as kind of the core focus of it, you're going to fail because it's not really what social's great at doing. I think we talked about kind of how you try and build engagement. With an engaged audience, you can then take them on a journey that leads them to buying something. It's really easy to kind of do that over time, but it does take a lot of work. So if you look at, say, our performance last year, we drove £18 million in sales to retailers in 2015, and that's all through our Facebook page. So that's taking people on a journey from engaging with bits of content that we put out, liking particular posts, sharing that with their friends, turning those fans on our page into ambassadors that then helps us build an ever bigger audience. And then because they then trust the content that we're putting out there, they're interested in the products that we're promoting, when they're ready to buy, we can find products that are interesting to them, get them in their feed, and then they're able to kind of make those impulse purchases. So what we focus on much more is not saying, okay, well, we need to make X amount from each user. It's saying, okay, look, what can we put in front of the users that's interesting? Then they'll keep us front and center. They'll be in their newsfeed more regularly, and then when they come to buy things, we're there to kind of give them the deals and the offers that they want.
Okay. And looking more generally and into the future, sort of what do you think is the next big thing in this space?
Yeah, so I think right now the big thing is definitely video, and particularly live video. So if you look at Facebook at the moment, we're seeing huge growth in the reach for our videos that we're putting out, particularly when we're doing live videos. So we're kind of lucky in the position that we are because we have a kind of public brand. So we've got a celebrity, for want of a better term, who is the public face of our company. So everything that we put out, we're able to kind of get Ashley to talk about it, put out content that our users are interested in, she'll then interact with them through the live video. So we'll encourage her to ask them questions, get involved, and that really kind of boosts the likes. And particularly if you've got a Facebook page at the moment, doing this, you'll see that if you put out live video, anyone that's following your page gets an alert, so instantly you're able to actually do kind of push notifications through Facebook, which is really powerful for getting that extra reach. So right now I think that's really key. In terms of sort of longer term, I'll be honest, I think it's quite hard to predict. I think what you really need to do is kind of look at what opportunities Facebook is kind of presenting, adapt and kind of look at how you can test those, and then once you find something that works, really kind of go after it fairly wholeheartedly and kind of get that sort of first mover advantage. But I'd say right now, if you've got a Facebook page and you're not using live video, you're missing a massive trick, and that's where you should start.
Okay, and one last question. You mentioned sort of in a synopsis for this session that social spend is going to increase. Do you think there are any changes that will happen when the spend goes up?
I think as spend goes up, there's going to be more scrutiny on the channel. So I think particularly if you look at social within, say, affiliate right now, it's fairly difficult to convince lots of advertisers and lots of networks, really, the value that's there. So as a social publisher, there are definitely kind of issues that you face, right? So the reach is huge, and the traffic that we can send is ginormous. We sent about 4.5 million clicks to advertisers last month alone. But with that comes a much lower conversion rate. And I think it's partly about kind of educating people about that's going to happen. In terms of opportunities, I think it's just really getting advertisers and networks to kind of understand the potential that's there. So, we talked a bit about kind of how we can do more sort of personalization and segmentation. That's really key. I think the insights that social publishers have into their audience and their data is kind of unrivaled, really, amongst most of the publishers. And I think being able to harness that and use that for the advertisers we're working with is a massive opportunity. I don't think it's one that many advertisers have really tapped into yet.